of food has been too high under President Biden. Her answer? Impose price fixing to prevent what she calls price gouging. It's her first and only policy platform, and even the mainstream media is criticizing her for it. Fox News contributor Joe Concha.
If this were to come to pass, those businesses would be out of business and you would have food shortages. I mean, they tried it in Venezuela, Argentina, the old Soviet Union. They even tried it here in the United States under Richard Nixon. And every time, the government capping prices arbitrarily, if you just read history, when they please, that has failed miserably.
And Kamala Harris is a big supporter of free government-run health care for all. Fox News medical consultant Dr. Mark Siegel says, obviously there are problems with that.
It's the idea that if you have coverage by the government, therefore you have access to actual health care, to doctors, to treatments. Right now in the United States, the average wait to see a new physician is almost 4 weeks in the United States. 37% of Americans are getting their care from Medicare and Medicaid. That would be the future if you extended it to all. You would have to wait. There's a tremendous physician shortage in the country. We saw during the pandemic. It's a patchwork system. If we turn into Canada here, it's again going to be long waits for things that are not worth, that you should not be waiting for.
A former CIA operative says Minnesota Governor Tim Walz thinks the Chinese Communist Party is on the right side of history and we're the bad guys.
As we have seen the past several days, the Democrat legacy media machine has been pulling out all the stops to somehow try to portray Kamala Harris's vice presidential candidate Tim Walz as some sort of moderate Midwestern Democrat. Sam Faddis is an author and a retired CIA operations officer. During an appearance on Washington Watch on American Family Radio, he made it clear that Walz has had a very cozy relationship with the Communist Chinese government.
For 30 years, he says nothing but positive things about a brutal totalitarian regime that essentially imprisons 1 billion people. And is no criticism, nothing but positive things to say. And the deeper you go into this, the more you see a guy who thinks the Chinese Communist Party is on the right side of history. We're the bad guys.
And Faddis says Walz has friends in commie places.
Look, when this guy was named as the vice presidential choice of Kamala Harris to be her running mate, the first people that came out and congratulated her and him were the Democratic Socialists of America, a pro-Chinese communist party inside the United States. So I think it's pretty clear what you got.
Faddis doesn't think Walz could get a security clearance to work on the loading dock at CIA.
As a senior enlisted member of the National Guard, I don't understand, quite frankly, how he maintained that security clearance with 30 trips back and forth to communist China.
I'm Chad Groening.
American Family News is available online at afn.net. And download the AFN mobile app for your Apple or Android device. I'm Rusty P.
AFA founder Don Wildman was a visionary. He saw the negative influence the movie and TV industries had on society and knew their technology could be used as tools to counteract the evil taking over our culture. That vision is realized in American Family Studios. We're committed to producing feature films, animated series, and documentaries that glorify God by upholding His standards. Find out how AFS can impact your family and friends at AmericanFamilyStudios.net.
Welcome to Today's Issues, offering a Christian response to the issues of the day. Here's your host, Tim Wildman, President of the American Family Association.
Hey, good morning, everybody, and welcome to Today's Issues on the American Family Radio Network. I'm Tim Wildman with Ed Vitagliano. Good morning, Ed.
Good morning, Tim.
And Fred Jackson.
Hi there, Tim.
And we thank you for listening wherever you may be joining us from along the American Family Radio Network or listening on the app. You may be listening on our AFR app, which is very, very popular now, which travels. You don't have to have a radio signal to download and listen to AFR on the app. So if you don't have it on your phone or your iPad or whatever you use there for your smart device, download the AFR app and you can listen clear as a bell anywhere in the world as long as it has high-speed internet. So take advantage of that. You gentlemen have a good weekend, did you?
Sure did.
I did as well.
Yep.
Yep.
Looking forward to the lower temperatures this week. I don't know if you guys noticed in our
Where we live.
Where
or
we
is
live-
it all over the country?
the home. No, it's getting down even along the Gulf Coast, down in the 60s overnight.
Wow.
There is, Canada gets blamed in the wintertime for snowstorms.
Yes.
So I want to take credit right now.
Yes.
There is a cold air stream coming down from Canada, coming down as far as the Gulf Coast here, and so we're going to get temperatures in the 60s overnight, and in some up in Nashville, Tennessee, in the 50s
Wow.
overnight.
In August.
I don't mind.
No, I don't either.
I don't.
And it was a very hot weekend. Again, like Tim says, where we live, probably up across much of the country. And what do they call them? The dog days of August. And I don't know where the word came from, the expression came from. But
Hey, when 91 is considered a cool break,
yes,
then you
that's
know
the truth.
it's been already a long August, but anyway, so it's 91 where we live here today, but. And then I'm looking 88. This is what old people do, right?
Yes.
Sit around Hardee's or McDonald's with a cup of coffee, talk about the weather.
The weather.
Especially men. Anyway, it looks like still going to be hot, but not crazy hot. Problem we're having where we live in North Mississippi is we had no rain now.
That's
for
right.
for like 2 weeks. I
It's
don't
been
know.
very dusty.
Yes, and things are starting to turn yellow and brown
Right.
and things of that nature.
Which I'm okay with when it comes to my grass.
Oh, you are?
My opinion is just
The uglier
let
it is, the better you like it.
let it die.
Yeah,
If it's dead, it's not growing.
right. Which means you don't have to get out and mow it.
No mowing
Yeah,
required.
when do towns and communities and/or states institute burn warnings? Because I've seen that before too. That happened where we live about 5 years ago. I remember that.
Yes, I guess because things get so dry, a stray cinder can ignite a county. So I don't know how I don't know what the criteria
There's
is. Yeah.
probably some kind of I'm sure there's some kind of scientific criteria to figure
Right.
that out. But
And you and I, if we wanted to look into it, we'd be all over that scientific criteria.
well, I
right?
love reading that stuff.
Yeah.
The scientific criteria.
Oh yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
That and pummeling horse,
Pommel horse.
the pommel horse.
I can't. I've gotten so
I
much.
know.
So much abuse over a legitimate
Sport.
sport
Yeah.
in gymnastics.
Right. I know.
The
Sorry,
pommel
I'm
horse.
sorry about that.
No,
really am.
I don't think you are because every Monday I get it.
I apologize.
Doesn't sound like you're sorry. Yes, you apologize, but are you sorry?
Yeah. What? You want to like make me bleed or something here? You want to keep going with this? All right. So anyway, listen. I just noticed here on the news before we get into the news, we had prepared to talk about that longtime legendary talk show host Phil Donahue passed away.
Yes.
Yeah, he did. What was 88? Was it?
Mm-hmm.
I think his age, and his wife of 44 years
Marlo
was
Thomas.
at his bedside. Yeah, very sad. I think didn't your dad was on a talk show with Phil Donahue one
Yes, my dad.
They were great friends.
Yeah,
time? Didn't go that far.
my dad was on with Phil Donahue. That's right, he was Don Wildman, and I can't remember if it was once or twice. Now Phil Donahue was the number one talk show, television talk show in. I say talk show. I mean, he had guests and in live audiences sometimes, so it wasn't just like Larry King talk show
Right.
necessarily, but he was like number one network for a few years. Anyway, back in the 70s and 80s,
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
and then along came Oprah Winfrey,
Yes.
and she went to a new level.
Right.
Yeah,
her
but she
show.
gave away cars. That helped.
You get a car and you get a car.
Right. Oprah Winfrey, she went, but she came out right after Phil Donahue. But yeah, he married Marlo Thomas, which now we're getting into baby boomer stuff now because she's the daughter of Danny Thomas,
Yes.
which was the actor, very popular in the middle part of the 20th century. Danny Thomas, and he also founded the St. Jude's Hospital.
Yes.
They do great work.
Yes.
Oh yeah. Oh, absolutely. So you'll still see Marlo Thomas on TV from with television advertisements trying to raise money for St. Jude's, the cancer Treatment Hospital for Children in Memphis.
Great work.
The Phil Donahue Show ran from 1967 to 1996, just shy of 30 years.
That's a long run.
That is a long, and he was a smart guy. Now, he was left as all get out. He was a true, probably classical liberal, but it was a very popular show. He had a great style in terms of keeping his guests engaged. So
nobody adjusted their eyeglasses more than Phil Donahue.
Yes.
You remember that?
Yeah.
That's kind of his signature move. He would adjust them, and he'd walk around the audience with, walk around the audience
with his microphone,
and then put it in the face of his audience to ask them what they thought about whatever.
Yeah.
So anyway, he was 88 years old. Phil Donahue passes away. That's breaking news today. All right, Fred, something happening. By the way, Phil Donahue started in Chicago.
I was just going to say that.
And speaking of
Chicago,
things heating up.
In Chicago.
Right, what's happening there?
Well, it is the opening day of the Democratic National Convention in Chicago. And what's going to go on inside the stadium where they're meeting is going to have to compete with what's going on the outside. Our lead story this morning, 6 o'clock, American Family Radio News, said up to 100,000 protesters are expected to be there. There's one researcher who has done some work on this, and 150 extremist groups are represented from this. This guy's name, this investigative research, is Ryan Morrow, and he kind of described for us what the scene is going to be like outside. Here's a clip from Ryan Morrow, cut number 1.
This is an alliance of Islamic extremists and communists, Marxists, and anarchists. All these groups, they worked together before, but I haven't seen them quite fuse together like we're seeing right now. And the vast majority of them support Hamas. So what's their agenda? To make the United States essentially not a factor in world affairs. And many of them have advocated or even participated in violence on American soil, economic sabotage, advocating the attacks on police. In many cases, these groups are basically terrorists themselves.
So they're trying to leverage, the media will be there in force, and they're trying to leverage that exposure for their causes. Most of them, Antifa, et cetera, are going to have some element of anti-Israel, pro-Hamas, pro-Palestinian, but also they're there to draw attention to their call for abortion rights, or as the left likes to call it, reproductive rights. And they're also there for other causes as well. So police there are going to have their hands full. Chicago and convention seem to go together with protests through the years. There's quite a history of it. But, another comment this morning from former acting ICE Director Tom Homan. He says black churches will also be among the protesters, but they're protesting something else. Giveaways to illegal aliens, cut number 2.
Chicago's a perfect example this administration created. And there's going to be other people protesting too. I mean, I've talked to several black pastors. There's going to be black churches protesting on what the city of Chicago, the giveaway program to illegal aliens, the free lodging, the free medical care, the free services that the black community isn't getting. So let's see what happens. But they're on display. What the America they created is on display this week, and I hope all America sees it.
Yeah, that's an interesting comment from Holman. What you're going to see in Chicago this week is a demonstration of what the Democratic Party has created over the last 3.5, 4 years with their policies.
Yeah, the fact of the matter is that there was some initial pushback by people like Nancy Pelosi when Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez was elected and started talking in more radical terms. I remember Nancy Pelosi, was famously dismissive of AOC, but that faction in the Democratic Party has grown, and it is becoming very powerful, and they want to run the Democratic Party. It's one thing for you to have an outside the mainstream ideology and have to start a political party from scratch. It's something different entirely if you have a chance to take over an already functioning political party, one of the two main political parties, and that is what's happening. And I don't think these people, especially the one that the first clip talked about, these kinds of splinter groups, the Marxists, the Democratic Socialists, if you want to call them that, the anti-Israel, pro-Hamas, all those kinds of groups, they want radical to be the middle name of the Democratic Party. And let me just say that now there have been, I think there was at least one Democratic Party convention in Chicago after 1968. I think Bill Clinton was nominated in 96 in Chicago. But 1968, it wasn't just here, but it was around the world, in Europe at least. 1968 was a pivotal year in the anti-war Vietnam movement. People were watching the Democratic National Committee convention on television. I remember because I watched those with my dad, and they saw the police, the Chicago police, in riot gear, cracking heads. And that's what Mayor Richard Daley, himself a Democrat, ordered. And they saw the anti-war protesters, and that became what the Democratic Party was kind of known for. So it remains to be seen if that happens at the DNC convention this week. But it sounds like these folks are ramping up.
Well, it's interesting because the Chicago police have been meeting with representatives of these demonstrators, and I think they're only allowing demonstrations up to a mile away from the main meeting point. My guess is if you've got 100,000 demonstrators in that city, they're going to find a way to break through, and because they want to get in where the TV cameras are.
Right.
And I think you're going to see some possibly very violent demonstrations and violence there.
And even and Tim, this is your show. We'll let you on here in just a second.
No, I'm listening. I'm learning.
It's not just the protesters outside. There is a very radical portion, I believe, of the delegates inside the convention who are going to want this party to turn against Israel.
Yes.
So they may not riot inside the convention, but they are going to try to push the Democratic Party further left.
Yeah, someone was saying on the weekend, Democrats have a Gaza problem because they're trying to appease a very strong Palestinian component, especially out of Michigan, and you have Somalis in Minneapolis. So you've got that component of the Democratic Party, which they depend on for votes.
Right.
But also they have got to at least publicly come out and say we support Israel. In the wake of October the 7th, the Democrats have said we will stand by Israel. We will stand by Israel. Well, that has not pleased these Palestinian Somalis and others that are out there. University kids who think Israel is the worst state on the face of the earth.
I expect to hear boos at the convention.
Yeah, you will.
If anything comes out from the platform that's pro-Israel, I think you'll hear significant boos from the crowd.
I think you're right.
Well, that's going to create problems. I don't necessarily disagree with you, but I mean, you got Jews, very prominent Jews in the Democrat Party. You got Chuck Schumer. He's a Jew. And they're Debbie Wasserman.
Wasserman Schultz.
I mean, she's very prominent in the party. Bill and Hillary Clinton are supporters of Israel.
Right. Hillary Clinton has come out publicly criticizing Hamas, what Hamas did.
She said you can't negotiate with these people.
Right.
She's right on that.
Yeah.
Hillary Clinton, I'm talking
about. A lot of folks, we remember 1968 and that period of about
I was
4 years.
I was just a toddler roaming around.
All right, so some of us don't remember. But the 4 or 5 years after 1968, before we officially came out of the Vietnam War, were very violent in America. A lot of people don't know this. I read out of 4 or 5 years ago, I wrote a short story about the violence that followed 1968. It wasn't just this convention. According to FBI statistics, in an 18-month period from 1971 to 1972, these radical groups we're talking about, the Weather Underground, Students for Democratic Socialism, I forget the SDS, 2,500 bombs went off in America, 5 a day in inner cities. And
wow,
a lot of people don't know how violent it got in this country. And it looks like we are kind of entering into another kind of phase where that becomes a possibility. Because, frankly, because of the policies of the radical left and the Biden administration.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, tonight is when President Joe Biden gives his speech Monday night. I think he's going to be introduced by his wife. His wife, Jill Biden, is also speaking. But this will be his last high-profile event before he gives up the presidency in January.
He needs to resign.
Beg pardon?
He needs to go ahead and resign.
Now, you're being serious, aren't you?
Oh, I'm dead serious. Yeah, he needs to go ahead and resign. He's not doing anything. His power basically has been transferred to Vice President Harris because everybody knows that she's going to be the nominee and that she's, if the Democrats are going to win the presidency, she's going to be the one, not him. He's the lamest of ducks.
Right.
And plus the fact that he's basically, he's been diminished mentally, that been on display for the world, which is the primary reason why he isn't the candidate anymore, even though he's the incumbent. And it shows up basically tied with Trump in all the places. So he wasn't. Well, he was not going to be favored to win. Let's put it that way. Trump was going to be favored to win, but it wasn't like blowout city that I remember. Basically, when you were looking at Biden versus Trump. But the point is, he's going to be speaking tonight, and I think this is going to be. Is he just going to get into the? Is it going to be bad like it has been?
Well, I don't think Joe Biden wanted to go. Maureen Dowd.
To the convention?
Yeah. No, he didn't want to give up running for a second term.
Oh, I got you.
Yeah, he did not want to give up running for a second term. Maureen Dowd, who is a New York Times liberal columnist, on Friday or Saturday, I think it was, wrote an article, and she used the coup word. This was a coup. Nancy Pelosi, Barack Obama, Chuck Schumer, and a few others basically said, "That's it, Joe, you're out. We are going to force it." Plus, they got those coup orchestrators, if you want to call them, they also got the media on their side.
Very quickly. It happened very quickly.
I just noticed it was amazing. The Associated Press was supporting Joe Biden. Along came that debate, which was a disaster, and all his allies turned against him. And we were talking about this at our story meeting in the newsroom this morning. Could it be that Joe Biden has a few sharp remarks this evening in his speech?
Nah,
I don't think so.
Do you think he's going to go peacefully?
I think he will.
Yeah, I do too.
I think he'll promote Kamala Harris as the nominee. I'm 100% behind her because he picked her. He picked her to be the vice president, his vice presidential candidate in 2020. So, in a sense, she's his legacy.
Yeah.
He's going to be supportive.
But think about it. I agree with Ed on that. Think about this for a minute. We're talking about, let's just say, what's today in August? What is today?
19.
Okay, let's just say, September 20th, October. I'm counting months on my fingers. Yeah. November, December, January. So approximately 5 months from now is when the inauguration day will be for whoever the next president is.
Right.
So basically, if he stays in office, you got 5 months without a president. The leader of the free world.
Right.
The commander-in-chief of America, of our armed forces, CEO of our country. He's going to be non-existent, basically. I mean, I guess he will still maintain the power of the office, and he can sign things, but there's going to be no interest on his part for really negotiating deals or handling situation room moments or hours? Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, I think you're exactly right. However, I would say that Kamala Harris will be the de facto president. So, because she's the nominee. And
is she really going to be in the White House doing the daily grind?
Well, I don't know, but I'm saying if somebody wanted to discuss something with the leadership of our country, okay, I think they would go see Kamala.
If I were her, I'd say, I don't know, I'm not the president. Go see Joe Biden if it's a hard one. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
If it's an easy one, you just field it.
Yeah.
Do the best you can. No cackle. Remember, no cackle.
Right.
No cackle.
But I think she's going to be running the show. It's clear from the media coverage of her, they're treating her almost as if she is the incumbent president,
right?
Not the incumbent vice president,
right?
Well, one more thing from the convention. This may not shock people, but I still find it shocking. Planned Parenthood is going to be there at the convention site. They're offering free abortions.
Absolutely wicked. They're full. Their schedule's filled already.
Yes. Their appointments have all been taken up. It's just amazing.
It's kind of someone in our leadership meeting this morning said it's like going to a convention and getting swag, a bag of goodies.
Yeah.
In the minds of the Democrats, the swag you get is a free abortion. Come on in and for free.
Yeah, they're proud. They're proud of that.
They're cut up your baby.
They're advertising it. They're proud of it, and this is sort of who we are, the American Democratic Party today. They are the party of abortions with no limits. No limits. Not 9 months doesn't matter.
Right.
You ask them to put any restrictions on abortion, they'll say no. You're violating reproductive rights. We'll be back momentarily. Stay with us.
It's my turn.
Here is your host for My Turn, Don Wildman.
Some time ago, Reader's Digest carried a story entitled Children's Letters to God. It's an interesting article. It contained actual letters that children had written to God. I want to share some of them with you. One went like this. Dear Mr. God, how do you feel about people who don't believe in you? Somebody else wants to know. A friend, Neil. And then there's another one that read simply, Dear God, what's it like when you die? Nobody will tell me. I just want to know. I don't want to do it. Your friend, Mike. And a youngster named Frank wrote this one. Dear God, I saw St. Patrick Church last week. You live in a nice house. Or take the one written by little Maria. Dear God, do you get your angels to do all the work? Mommy says we are her angels, and we have to do everything. Well, Barry wrote, Dear God, church is all right, but you could sure use better music. I hope this does not hurt your feeling. Can you write some new songs? Your friend, Barry. Reading over those simple letters from children addressed to the deity reminds one of the scene one day when the master took a little child and set him in his lap and said that the greatest in heaven would be like the little child. I'm quite sure that the great carpenter knew fully what he was doing and saying that day. And his wisdom is evident in the letters of these children. For instance, how does God feel about people who don't believe in him? A good answer would be heartbroken. Or again, what is it like when you die? I guess that kind of depends on where you go. And despite the misconception, God does live in a nice house, a house not made by hands. And to answer Maria, no, God doesn't use his angels to do his work. He uses his servants here on earth, and sometimes it doesn't get done. And about the music, sometimes I have to agree with Barry. It's kind of off-key, and it appears we need some new songs. We need more of this childlike faith in all its simplicity, too. They do not question the existence of God, and they refer to him in a polite manner with due respect. They're not worried about all the great theological and doctrinal questions we adults are. They simply believe in God and believe He loves them. And the greatest quality they have is their humility. Listen to this letter written by little Maxine. "Oh Lord, thank you for giving me my dad and mother, and these children, and dog and fish. Thank you for giving us the nice world to live in, and eyes to see it, and what we eat and brains to think. Thank you for everything. Love, Maxine." That letter is a beautiful prayer, isn't it? Sometimes I have a feeling that God would like more letters like that one. Not only would He like for us to write that way, but more important, He would like for us to live that way. Whoever humbles himself like this child, he is the greatest in the kingdom of heaven. Pray for childlike faith.
This has been My Turn with Don Wildman, a production of the American Family Association.
However, as it is written, what no eye has seen, what no ear has heard, and what no human mind has conceived, the things that God has prepared for those who love Him. 1 Corinthians 2:9.
American Family Radio. This is today's issues. Email your comments to comments@afr.net. Past broadcasts of today's issues are available for listening and viewing in the archive at afr.net. Now, back to more of today's issues.
Welcome back to today's issues on the American Family Radio Network. Tim, Ed, and Fred, thank you for listening to AFR. And we were talking about the Democrat National Convention going on in Chicago. Starts tonight, right?
Starts tonight. Speeches from Jill Biden and President Biden.
Just set so I can tape those. I don't know if I can watch them live, but I do want to get them on. Joe Biden and Jill Biden. Reckon what time they might come on, Fred?
Probably 7 to 9.
7 to 9. I'll record
Central Time.
That's 7 to 9.
I'll record that time slot. See what happens. Is Michelle Obama speaking tonight too?
I'm not sure. Her husband, Barack Obama, tomorrow night.
Type in Michelle Obama speaking, Ed, and see what pops up there.
Speeches at DNC. See if we can get a schedule. Let me say schedule.
Put a schedule.
See if we can get a. Here's what to know. Lineup. Who's speaking and what to expect. So Monday is for the people. That's the theme. Joe Biden, Dr. Jill Biden, former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton, and a welcome from Chicago Mayor Brandon Johnson. Tuesday, a bold vision for America's future, whatever that.
All right.
Whatever.
Who's on tap that night?
Former President Obama plus second gentleman Doug Emhoff.
Doug's going to speak.
Yeah, good old Doug.
Yeah.
With a welcome from Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker. Wednesday, a fight for our freedoms. Vice presidential nominee Tim Walz. You taking all this down?
I'm writing notes.
Preceded by former President Clinton, Speaker Emerita Nancy Pelosi, and Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg. That is per CNN. And Thursday, for our future, Harris accepts the convention's nomination for president.
Mm-hmm.
Other speakers include Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer, House Democratic Leader Hakeem Jeffries.
So you're telling me Michelle Obama is not speaking?
I am looking at the schedule. I do not see her. Okay, I'm just going to say
maybe she's still in the Mediterranean with George Clooney.
Listen, there's still a chance for me to be right about Michelle Obama.
I was wondering if that was
that one.
Right? Yeah.
Oh
wait, I'm sorry. One speaker who's not on the official agenda. This is from Axios, but Axios has confirmed will take the stage on Tuesday. Former First Lady Michelle Obama.
Tomorrow night.
Tuesday night. Yeah.
Yeah.
So she's not officially on.
It's going to be the surprise.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. There was some rumor floating around this weekend that the Democrats were going to replace Kamala Harris at this late juncture.
Oh, that's
really?
Yeah. Todd Starnes put that out. Among others.
There's zero chance of that unless they dump Kamala Harris and pick Michelle Obama. And then I become a genius. I become right.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, we'll see, as they say, Ed.
I don't.
What happens here?
There's no way they're going to dump Kamala
Listen,
Harris.
okay, if you just take Michelle Obama and put her up against Donald Trump, she might be favored. I don't know, because the Obama legacy, although conservatives might deny this, the Obama legacy with, I think, a majority of Americans was pretty good.
Yeah.
Okay, so, and she was a very popular first lady, as most first ladies are.
Right.
Okay, they're popular. They're more popular with the American people than their husbands are as president. So that if you just put that in the equation, yeah, I could see why the Democrats maybe would have done that or would have liked to done that. But the problem is people aren't robots, right. and so Michelle Obama, from all indications, and if you hear people who know her quoted, they say she has no interest in politics or being president. She has a, quote, good life. They're very wealthy.
Yeah.
They hang out with the rich and famous. They do what they want to, go where they want to, and the stress of the presidency is off their shoulders.
And they make speeches whenever they want to.
Yeah.
People want to hear their opinion.
Why do you want to go back into the White House if
Right.
if you're Michelle Obama?
I don't understand how President Barack Obama served. Now, he did serve 8 years, and that's a great paycheck that they get. But how in the world did he get rich?
No, it's not a great paycheck.
No.
If you read about
being
read how much. Okay,
Yeah.
but read how. Oh, I see what you're saying. You're saying they don't get paid a whole lot.
So how did they get rich?
Oh, book deals, speaking engagements.
All legit. Yeah, okay. You're saying
sitting on.
they go the legitimate route.
Friends with Hunter Biden?
Friends of Hunter.
Yeah.
I don't think he has many right now.
No, but in the day.
Listen, all these politicians, Republicans or Democrats, they all get rich.
$400,000 a year.
To be the president?
The president receives in full for
That's
his
pathetic.
services in the aggregate amount of $400,000 a year to be paid monthly. And in addition, an expense allowance of $50,000 to assist in defraying expenses relating to or resulting from the discharge of his duties.
College football coaches get $5 million a year. That's kind of a base salary.
But they usually have a better year.
Oh, than the president?
Yes. That's a Babe Ruth quote or something like that.
Okay.
Somebody was asking how much you got paid. You get paid more than the president. And he said, well, I had a better year.
True. I'm just saying $400,000 to be president of the United States, you're not in it for the money.
Right.
Okay. That's, and in Washington, D.C., that's probably, that area, to live in that area, that's probably about $200,000.
Well, they do get to live in the White House.
Value, well, yeah.
And free food.
Yeah. Okay. But I'm just telling you that's
free.
I know that sounds like a lot of money to most people, and $400,000 is a lot of money, but it's not a lot of money to make annually to be president of the United States.
Right.
Your average doctor in your town makes that much.
Right.
Probably. So that's that. And what I'm saying is, I wanted to tell you, I thought of a joke. Bear Bryant, the legendary football coach at the University of Alabama. This is I can't document this story, but somebody told me who somebody told them who somebody told them. So that's kind of story it was, but it goes around. Said somebody asked him. Some reporter asked Bear Bryant, said, "Hey, your professor here at the university gets paid paltry compared to you, and you're coaching football, a game for kids." And he goes, "Well, yeah, but if you can get 70,000 people to come watch a science class, then I'm all for that professor getting paid more."
That's pretty sharp.
By the way, I looked it up. It was Babe Ruth. In 1930, baseball player Babe Ruth signed a contract that paid him $80,000 a year, which was more than President Herbert Hoover made at the time. When asked if he thought he deserved to make more than the president, Ruth is said to have replied, "Why not? I had a better year than he did."
That's a great quote.
That is.
Great quote. All right, you're listening to Today's Issues on the American Family Radio Network. Tim, Ed, and Fred. Next story, Fred.
Well, Vice President Kamala Harris is out there. She's given speeches, but she still hasn't had a news conference. She does.
How long has this been?
As 20-some days now, at least. 20-some days.
You mean where she doesn't sit and field questions for 10 minutes or so from the press? She doesn't do that?
Nada.
Why is that?
Well, she doesn't want to be questioned about her past remarks on like Medicare, about free medical care for illegal aliens, all of that sort of thing, because there's a lot of information out there of things that she has said in the past.
29 days.
29 days. Well, she's also not been asked questions directly about a speech that she gave on Friday. It was billed as her first policy speech, and it was to deal with her view on what needs to be done to correct the nation's economic problems, because the economy, according to all polls, is big on people's minds these days. Well, she went to North Carolina, I think it was Raleigh, North Carolina, Friday afternoon, and she began to speak about what she's going to do if she becomes president. Number one, economically speaking, she said she's going to do something about those high grocery prices. She believes the grocery chains in this country are getting really rich because they're charging far too much for groceries. She has run into a lot of problems with that, even amongst some in the mainstream media. I want you to play you a montage of how some of the media were responding this weekend, particular to this idea of controlling food prices. Cut number 6.
Anything that smacks of price fixing, that I don't think works.
Is this plan to ban price gouging anything more than a gimmick, Governor?
I think it speaks to Kamala Harris's values.
It seems like totally unworkable, first of all, for the FTC to be deciding like how much Kroger charges for eggs.
Is this just a ploy? Because it sounds kind of like it. But is it really policy? I mean, price gouging?
Well, Catherine Rampell, the Washington Post columnist and NewsHour contributor, said it's impossible to exaggerate how bad this policy is, and I agree with that.
What triggered this? What did she say?
Well, because grocery prices, depending on what you're talking about, eggs or beef or whatever the case may be, at the very least have gone up 21%, some as high as 40 and 50%. Now, those who look at the economy honestly say it's because of policies of the Biden administration, the inflation that they have caused. And so, so the Biden administration, Kamala Harris included, are now saying it's not our fault. The grocery stores are just charging way too much. Here's the problem, and that's why you have some in the mainstream media, because price fixing has been done before. She used the word gouging, all right? Price gouging. That word gouging is usually only used, for instance, if there's a hurricane on the coast and they want to stop gas stations from charging 3 times as much to people when other gas stations are closed down. But she wants to bring in the government, the FTC, the Federal Trade Commission, to control prices. And people like Preston Brashers at the Heritage Foundation says this simply doesn't work. Cut number 5.
It's either a case of demagoguery or economic illiteracy here, because if you want to talk about grocers price gouging, the truth is that they have profit margins of about 2% or less in most cases. This is the sort of thing they've tried in countries like Venezuela and former Soviet Union, and the truth is markets know a lot better about what prices should be than any politician, and certainly Vice President Harris.
So Harris has said she wants to. Did we play this? And did we play Harris saying?
No.
Okay.
No.
Okay. I wasn't.
I was just talking about her speech. I did listen to the whole speech on Friday.
Do we have the clip?
No, we don't.
Okay. I thought Steve said maybe Steve's bringing it in next.
There's another matter of her speaking.
Okay. Well, anyway, she's talking about. First of all, you can't do that. You can try. I think this is more for Harris is more trying to play populist politics, kind of like what Biden did when he said, I'm going to erase all the student loans, basically, in America. I'm going to transfer the student debt people have and give it to the American taxpayer. I'm going to do that so I can get more votes from these people who, them and their families, get the debt taken off, student debt. So now he did do that. He did do that, despite the fact that he couldn't constitutionally do it. He did do that. Remember, he said the court said I can't do it, but I'm going to do it anyway.
Right.
Remember that? He said, "Now, I don't know. That sounds like a threat to our democracy." Huh?
Which is what they're always accusing former President Trump of being.
Bingo.
Yeah.
Bingo. But Biden went ahead with that anyway. I don't know where that is in the courts today, if that's been ultimately decided, whether he unilaterally can transfer debt, trillions of dollars of debt.
Well, the Supreme Court said he couldn't, but he said we're going to work around that in the education department.
Yeah. So it's the same type idea with Harris saying, we're going to, prices of food are going up too high. We're going to solve that. We're going to try to fix prices. As I say, I think that's an empty threat, but it does represent an ideology.
Yes, it does.
That is dangerous. That can be will be found in other places in her, quote, economic policy. Let me say one other thing about her not taking, you notice how I didn't let y'all, I took a breath and went right into my second point.
Right. I noticed.
That's a technique you use to keep talking before you forget what you're going to say.
Yes.
So the reason that Harris has not done a press conference or a sit-down interview of any substance one-on-one with a legitimate journalist who will ask her hard questions in how many days?
29.
29.
Okay, there's two reasons why that's the case. One is, and they're related. One is some people are good at that, like Trump. Some people are terrible at that, like Harris. Now, I don't know whether Trump is still on top of his game. I don't think he is. I've seen him. He's not the same Trump he was 4 or 5 years ago, and that's just because he's aged. He's 78 years old. But he's still pretty good on his feet, I'm talking about, and dealing with reporters. He's still pretty good, but at one time he was like, he used all that experience for being on The Apprentice for 10 years and his high-profile status. He was very comfortable doing interviews, and the gaggle line, we all know how he would basically take all comers,
Right.
Trump would, with respect to Q&A. For Harris, she's just not any good at it at all, and that's the reason they're keeping her from doing these. And it makes sense politically because if you're basically tied with Trump now, and your candidate's weakness is live interviews or taking questions from the press, why not shield her from that? And the worst that can happen is you get criticized for shielding her from that, like we're doing now, knowing that for the most part, the liberal media is going to let you get away with that because they're on your team. You know what I'm saying? They want Harris to win too. They don't want to see her damaged by saying something stupid on a national interview and it going viral. Like I've never been to Europe either. Remember?
Yeah.
If
when asked why she hadn't been down to the border.
Mexico, yeah. And then said, I don't understand your question. And the question from Lester Holt was pretty direct about you haven't been to the Mexican border even though you're in charge of it. What do you say about that? And she goes, I don't understand your question. I mean, you remember that?
Yeah, I do.
So she's terrible at that. Unless they've also coached her though, and she doesn't do that cackle. They're coaching. She's listening to her personality, public persona coaching.
Yeah.
Because she's doing a lot better at not doing the things that annoy people, publicly. So anyway.
But you know what? She's got a problem because she wanted to be president back 2019.
Right, when she ran.
And, there was the questions in one of the debates. Remember, you had about 8 Democrat candidates at one point who would give, Medicare for all.
Right.
She put up her hand, Medicare for all. She's got this record that she cannot deny, and she's trying to, she's been flip-flopping on some things. But from that speech on Friday, the second one that she's catching a lot of flack for, she said, housing prices are out of control. And I don't disagree with that, and most people don't. But here's her solution. If I become president, I'm going to start writing checks for $25,000 for first-time home buyers and to help them get into a house. Well, that's been tried before, too. policies to make housing, to get you into a house to make it cheaper, and it just doesn't work. Fox's Joe Concha talked about that part of her speech this morning. Cut number 4.
We are witnessing a major shift in this race. That started on Friday when Kamala Harris, in the words of Donald Trump, quote, went full communist, unquote. I mean, first, she wants to give first-time homeowners $25,000 each to buy a home. Was this person alive in September 2008? Subprime mortgages, bad loans to people who couldn't afford to pay them back. It resulted in the worst collapse of this economy since 1929, and she thinks that's a good idea? I mean, good luck with that, because she must think there's enough stupid people out there. And then she's offering, as you just mentioned, government-run price controls for alleged price gouging by evil food stores like Kroger, for example. If food stores have a profit margin of somewhere between 1% and 2%, the margins are so thin. If this were to come to pass, those businesses would be out of business and you would have food shortages. I mean, they tried it in Venezuela, Argentina.
Well, and the first part there is responding to this $25,000 checks going to first-time buyers. First of all, a little bit more to that. It would only go to certain groups, according to her campaign. But also the fact that this has been tried before, and what happens, $25,000 may get you into a mortgage, but the problem is you can't afford the mortgage payment. You have defaults on mortgages, and banks go ballistic about that. So I
got a more fundamental problem with that. I understand what you're saying, the ramifications of it, Fred. The fundamental problem is that's unconstitutional. It's un-American. And it's insane. Okay, I just put all those things together. The idea of the federal government handing people $25,000 to go buy a house, huh? That's I've never. You've heard of this before? Do they do this in Canada?
One of the guys we just played, the federal government did try this. Now they
when?
Well, this would led to the collapse of the housing market.
Cash?
Well, it wasn't cash. It was they gave
I know
banks.
they had bad loans.
They gave banks
loans.
I think they underwrote the banks lending money to people who couldn't actually afford the house.
That's what happened.
And that's
what happened in 2008 with the housing crash,
right?
And the Fannie Mae and the Freddie Mac and all that
right.
stuff.
This is a little bit different, but it's still the federal government getting involved. Look, the reason why Kamala Harris is not doing interviews is because voters don't care. Voters don't care that she's hiding from the news media. What they would care about is when she opens her mouth in an interview and says something stupid, like she did when she made this speech, this policy speech. The American economy, we're with 330 million people. This economy is huge. You cannot control it top down and still have free markets. The only way you can attempt to do it is what happened in Venezuela, where you start nationalizing, okay? And Kamala Harris is revealing herself to be an out-and-out communist. The only way you can force prices to come down is if the government is running the economy, and the government owns. You go to the grocery store, and all there are commie cornflakes produced. Mass-produced by the government. This is what the Soviet Union tried.
Yes.
This is a Soviet Union error. Okay? The government produces the food. The government buys up the farmland. The government tells you who's going to work the farms and what you do with the wheat and what you do with the corn, and it goes over here, and the government decides. You cannot tell Kroger that you cannot charge X amount of money for a box of cornflakes. You can't do that because they're buying the cornflakes from Kellogg's, and Kellogg's is charging what they want. And if they don't want to get the money that Kroger can now afford to pay them, they're going to either stop producing cornflakes or they're going to send those cornflakes to another store. And that's why Venezuela has food shortages.
Yes.
Because they tried this top-down approach to the economy.
Yeah, good points. Good economic lesson there. You're listening to today's issues, Fred, Tim, and Ed. Let me tell you one other thing about that is that kind of bothers me. I don't think the word communist has the effect it once did. because I think too many Americans have been dumbed down. I'm talking about of all age categories, but especially like 50 under. You say communism to them, they go, "What are you talking about?" In other words, they don't remember the Soviet Union.
They think you're talking about welfare.
Yeah,
we need some
welfare.
extra help.
You say define communist to the average person under 50 in America. I bet they would say, I'm not sure. I've heard about it, but I'm not sure. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
The ideology, the Marxist. You say, well, who's Karl Marx? I don't know. Was he like with Billy Joel? Who did he tour with?
He wasn't Groucho's brother.
It wasn't Groucho. I mean, you know what I'm saying? I think that's a real problem in America today. Is that for a lot of the younger generation, especially, they don't have anything to compare it to. The world and the economy and our way of life has just always sort of been like it has been, and so I think there's a certain segment of Americans who just vote on their emotions.
Well, I heard Kamala Harris making a speech. It was, and I don't know how recent this was. I don't know if it was 3 years ago or 2 years ago or whether it was last week. I don't remember, but I've been listening to a lot of things she said. And she was making a speech and saying, you know what? We all want to come out at the same, we all want the same thing. But you know what? We didn't all start off in the same place. Some people had more advantages than others. And the reason they got way down the road is because of those advantages. And now it's time to give those advantages to everyone. She is talking about equality of outcome.
Yes.
And therefore, we need to redistribute the wealth of this country to give everyone the same starting point.
She is a communist. I mean, she may not be for, a secret police force to knock on doors, although that's where communism usually ends up. See Venezuela. But I'm just saying, she's not going to come out and say, "Hey, who's with me on a secret police force for America?" Right. She's not going to say that. But she's the things she's talking about. Furthermore, I don't think she can defend them on a philosophical ideology. I don't think she understands them herself that much. She just knows it plays well, especially for Democrats, to say, "Hey, I got more free stuff coming your way."
Yeah, but if you don't have to defend it in an interview,
right,
then it's not a problem that you can't defend it.
Right. Now, I do think she will have to defend it somewhat in a debate situation.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not sure when the first debate is between Trump and Harris.
September.
Okay, I do think she will have to then. She'll have to articulate it somewhat. We'll be back momentarily with more.
The views and opinions expressed in this broadcast may not necessarily reflect those of the American Family Association or American Family Radio.
Faith, family, freedom. American Family Radio.
As a federal or state employee, you have the opportunity to support the American Family Association through the combined federal campaign. By designating a monthly payroll deduction using 12037, you help AFA continue to fight for your family. So when you complete your CFC form, remember, AFA's number is 12037. And thank you for your help.
This is American Family Radio, a listener-supported ministry of the American Family Association.
American Family News, I'm Steve Pugh. Former President Donald Trump and his running mate, Ohio Senator J.D. Vance, are touring battleground states as the Democratic National Convention is underway, stopping first in Pennsylvania. Grady Trimble is in York, Pennsylvania with more.
Former President Trump spotlighting what his campaign calls anti-American energy policies of the Biden-Harris administration and, by extension, the Harris-Walz ticket. A key issue here in make-or-break Pennsylvania is, of course, fossil fuel production. It is, after all, one of the top energy-producing states in the country.
We will drill, baby, drill. We're going to get your energy prices down.
Trump's running mate, Senator J.D. Vance, is also in the Keystone State. He's in Philly, focusing on the economy, too. He's going after Vice President Harris for calling inflation a day one priority, despite the fact she's been in office since 2021.
The Chicago Police Department, the Secret Service, and the Democratic National Committee are preparing for pro-Palestinian and anti-war protests around the Democratic National Convention in Chicago. Trump Vance 2024 Deputy Press Secretary Caroline Sunshine says this indicates some hypocrisy on the Democratic Party's part.
I noticed at the DNC this week, too, we're seeing perimeters and walls put up to help secure their facilities from protesters. Pretty interesting that they think they can use walls to secure the DNC, but they can't use one to secure our southern border. Looks like at the DNC, it's walls for me and not for thee.
Meanwhile, the media has covered the issue of eliminating taxes on tips in two different ways. When Donald Trump proposed it months ago, there was this.
It should come as no surprise that the all-caps tax relief that Donald Trump is promising are actually backdoor ways to give rich people big tax breaks.
But when Kamala Harris said it,
but politics aside, the push for no taxes on tips is gaining momentum nationwide.
Fox News contributor Ben Domenech says we're in an absurd moment politically.
It's absolutely ridiculous the way that this bias is out there and very public. And I think that we have to understand just how absurd this is. We are in an absurd moment politically. Whether she plans to deliver on any of those ideas or policies is a different question. She certainly hasn't done that throughout the course of her career. But basically, everything that she's doing is saying, if there's something that is popular that the Trump-Vance ticket is endorsing, I'm going to get behind it too and then try to muddy the water and make people feel like, oh, I can do this too. And everyone on the left of the political spectrum who works within the media is just going to run and say how wonderful and joyful it is when she does it and how terrible or impossible it is when it's proposed by Donald Trump or J.D. Vance.
The Nebraska Supreme Court ruled that a law banning gender mutilation surgeries for minors is constitutional and that it can stay in place in the state. Bronson Woodruff has more.
Attorneys with the Thomas More Society are taking a victory lap after the court struck down the challenge. Matt Heffron is a trial attorney and senior counsel for the Thomas More Society. He said this was a challenge to a new Nebraska law in the new 2023 legislative session.
And after the legislators passed a 12-week abortion ban combined with a ban on underage transgender surgery, the ACLU sued on behalf of Planned Parenthood.
He explained the claim was that under an article in the Nebraska Constitution that it violated the Constitution by having more than one subject. Heffron said that on first glance, you might think that abortion and so-called gender transition surgery are different subjects.
But the truth of the matter is, across the country, these legislative statute single subject rules are interpreted very broadly, usually with the courts deferring to the legislature.
And that's what the Nebraska Supreme Court did on July 26th.
It said that since Nebraska interprets its single subject rule broadly, that the statute is acceptable, and we now have a 12-week abortion ban plus a ban on transgender surgery.
Heffron said challenges like this don't come on a regular basis, but on the course of history, yes, there have been well over 100 challenges like this in the country.
And almost always they get turned down.
I'm Bronson Woodruff.
U.S. stocks are holding relatively steady as Wall Street's roller coaster of a summer levels out a bit. The S&P 500, 0.3% higher in midday trading today. The Dow Jones Industrial Average rose 178 points, and the Nasdaq Composite added 0.1%. For American Family News, I'm Rusty Pugh.
Thoughts of the child you were carrying keep pouring over in your mind. A deep, unrelenting sadness overshadows your days, and you wonder if you will ever feel whole again. There is hope and healing from a reproductive loss. Call the International Helpline, 866-482-LIFE, and talk with someone who has been where you are. Your call is confidential, and we will help you find healing. 866-482-LIFE.
Today's Issues continues on AFR with your host, Tim Wildman, president of the American Family Association.
Welcome back to Today's Issues. Tim, Ed, and now Steve Paisley Jordahl.
Hey, everybody.
Morning, Brother Steve.
Good morning.
Steve, I got some riveting TV for you tonight.
Oh, I can't wait. What am I going to watch?
Oh, yeah.
What are you going to watch? The only game in town.
Instead of the Jack and Jill show, it's going to be the Joe and Jill show. Tonight in Chicago, live from Chicago.
I have one question. Whether it's going to be entertaining or not. Is there going to be a teleprompter?
I want to see the teleprompter go on the fritz.
But wouldn't you? You let him just freestyle.
I want to see what he says without a teleprompter.
Joe Biden and Jill Biden. Joe Biden, the current president, or so they say, is.
So
some people say I'm gonna do Trump. Some people say.
Some people say. I don't say. Some people say.
Go ahead.
So Jill, by all accounts, was the person that was keeping Joe Biden in the race for so long. I mean, she was the force that kept pushing him and pushing him. She should have stepped in sooner, is what you hear over and over again.
Oh, she stepped in.
Well, so here's
she
what I'm
propped
wondering.
him up.
Is she going to be a little bit bitter tonight?
Oh, when she speaks.
Yeah.
Now, that's a good question. Now, we talked about in the first hour whether Joe Biden would be. I don't think he will. I think he'll be supportive of Kamala Harris, but I don't know about Jill. That's a good question. I should Dr. Biden.
I got a funny thing that would work, I think.
Yeah.
It would be a comedy goal.
Okay.
If I were Joe Biden and I wanted to get revenge on the people that are going to be there who cooed me.
Yeah.
Okay. They you know what I would do? I would speak for 2 hours. I would speak for
Joe Biden speak for 2 hours?
Well, I'm just theoretically.
Yeah.
I'm saying wouldn't that be hilarious for him to speak for 2 hours and see who has to come get him off the stage, and then he could say, "See, here we go again." You see what I'm saying? Here we go again. First of all, you pulled me off the national stage.
Yeah.
Now I'm here to physically speak. And they're pulling me off here with two people.
Yeah.
So I want you to know who's behind the curtain, and then watch them yank him off. What do you think about that, baby?
Well, now,
just go long.
Now, first of all, you said it'd be comedy gold. I don't see anything funny about listening to Joe Biden for 2 hours. But what you said at the end, that would be funny. Wait, I'm not through yet. I'm not ready to go.
Don't you think the orchestra would start playing after 10 minutes?
Dun, dun, dun,
the Democrats
dun,
watching that are going to be going, please let it be over. Please let it be over. Hurry up. Talking about Biden's speech. But Jill Biden speaking to you. So you think she may get some things off her chest?
I'm just wondering.
Directed at people who are there in the audience. I don't think so.
Yeah, probably not. Maybe not.
Because it's not going to change anything.
Right.
And she still wants to be invited to all the parties.
There you go.
So anyway, I probably will watch as much of it as I can tonight.
Well, that's not much of a commitment.
How's that for lukewarm?
I'll watch as much as I can.
Watch
tomorrow morning I'll come in. What'd you watch? 2.5 minutes. That's all I could.
Old hockey highlights.
Yeah.
I got distracted.
Mm-hmm. All right, so
I was listening to you guys talk the last part of the hour where you were talking about equity versus equality, right?
Yes, we were talking about what Kamala Harris said. Do you remember? Are you aware of the speech?
I know the speech. I've heard the speech you're talking about.
Yeah.
Or quoted anywhere where she says, it's all good to give everybody the same thing, but they don't start at the same place.
Right.
So here's my question, Kamala. You give everybody enough. You give the poor people more money. You tax the rich. You put everybody at the same spot, right? And you say, go. What happens in 10 years? How often? 10 years from now, the people that have discipline and hard work and ethics are going to have a lot more than the people who don't and are living on welfare and just kind of blaming everybody else for their life.
Yeah.
Are you going to have to do it again?
That's a valid point, because if Elon Musk and Ed Vitagliano have whatever they have,
yeah.
Okay, now Elon, we're going to take a lot more away from Elon. And
I think you should go halfway. You can get half of his money.
Elon and Ed Vitagliano have everything stripped away from them, and they start from scratch right now, tomorrow, Tuesday, August 20th. In 5 years, Elon Musk is going to be just about all the way there. Ed Vitagliano is probably not going to be to where I am now. There are certain people who are gifted like Elon Musk.
Not just the
For everyone else, it takes – now, it does take breaks. I will say this, and I'm not disputing that not everyone starts at the same place, But and some people have an advantage. If you come from a home that's fairly well-to-do and they buy you your first vehicle, they're able to do that, and you trade that in. I understand how all that works, but there's no way to change that. That is part of the reality of human existence. It's been the way ever since the beginning, and there's no changing that, no matter what the commies think.
My point is, as a general rule, and there are tons of exceptions you can point to, but as a general rule, the harder you work, the more disciplined you are, the more you study,
right,
the farther along you're going to get.
That's right out of the book of Proverbs.
Yes. And so eventually you're going to have a whole bunch of people who have a whole lot more than a whole bunch of other people. And Kamala Harris is going to come along and say, this isn't fair.
Right.
We're not starting at the same spot. So how often do you restart?
Well, that's valid. As often as it takes, Steve. If you're committed to an equitable society and a just society,
you do it
Steve
like
Jordahl, you do it as often as it takes.
How about doing it like biblical Israel? Was it every 50 years all your debts were
year of Jubilee?
Year of Jubilee. Everything was reset.
Hey, I wanted to hear the let's talk a little bit more about the Kamala Harris communist plan for price controls. We do have, by the way, Brent Creeley, our producer, you said you found the speech where she talks about price controls, right? Let's play it, and then you have something else where she threatens drug companies. Go ahead.
Believe me, as president, I will go after the bad actors. And I will work to pass the first ever federal ban on price gauging on food. My plan will include new penalties for opportunistic companies that exploit crises and break the rules, and we will support smaller food businesses that are trying to play by the rules and get ahead. We will help the food industry become more competitive because I believe competition is the lifeblood of our economy. More competition means lower prices for you and your families.
Well, she did whiplash there. Huh? That last part, she sounded like Ronald Reagan.
She reminds me of the 8th grader that's running for class president. I'm going to put a candy machine for free in every hallway.
No school on Fridays. I'm going to get rid of homework. Listen, that's first of all, it doesn't that plan, using air quotes here, is going to collapse under the flimsiest of scrutiny. Okay, because none of it made any sense. But she's calling these grocery stores and these chains bad actors. She's going to bring the full. I don't think it's legal what she's saying she is going to do.
She's pandering.
You have to toss out the Constitution.
There's never been a problem.
She's pandering like Democrats do most of the time. Republicans can pander too, but she's a pander bear. You know?
That's Panda Express.
Yeah, Panda Express right there.
See what I did?
And that's what politicians do. Especially Democrats during a national election, it's promise everybody the world, especially the poor and the middle class, and then try to pit the poor and the middle class versus the rich and wealthy who are controlling and ruining your lives, and it's unfair. I mean, that's worked.
Yeah,
that's worked over the decades in American politics, and there have been historical examples of that kind of thing going on. But no system is perfect. But as my dad used to say, the free enterprise system, undergirded by the Christian value system, provides the most beneficial living for the most people.
Right.
And that's been proven by the United States of America's, the experiment of the USA. And, quite frankly, also, we do have a somewhat of a safety net for people. And I'm glad we do. Some of it by the federal government, a lot of it by charities,
right?
Christian charities. We as a people do care for the poor and the disadvantaged and those who have suffered. So we had welfare, right? We have a lot of welfare
Right.
programs. I mean, we have a lot of welfare. If you look at the federal budget, there's a lot of money that goes to helping poor people and providing programs and free stuff. Then you have, Social Security, which now that's not welfare. You pay into that. What are y'all watching? I'm missing something.
No,
or am I that boring?
No. No.
Y'all keep staring at the TV screen,
sorry,
and I don't. Nobody's looking at me.
I was watching. We've told our folks we have 4 news feeds playing on the screen, and it's Tim. In my defense, it's right behind your right ear, where I'm. So I was looking at you, and then I saw a commercial where this house had mold in it, and I. So anyway,
I can see how you would be distracted.
How
with
did that
kind
happen?
Of
Wow.
commercial. Yeah. So
sorry.
So listening to Tim or watching a commercial on mole, I'm going with the commercial on mole.
All right.
Okay.
Okay. You have my full. You have my full. I'm listening
Well,
to it.
have you ever talked to somebody and they're looking past you the whole time? It's just very distracting.
Yes, it happens every night at dinner.
Okay. But who is she looking at? Just looking out the window?
A hummingbird feeder just past my right ear.
Okay. Anyway, where was I? What were we talking about?
Well, we were talking about important stuff, Tim. we were talking about Kamala Harris and the pandering.
Over to you, Steve.
All right. Well, we've had big companies. This is it's historic. I think one of you guys just said this, that people have been blaming big business and making victims out of people for a long time. Do you guys remember the late 70s of the gas shortages?
I do.
And everybody was thinking that
the late 70s, wasn't it the it was the early 70s when OPEC during the Nixon administration.
That's when we put the stickers on our lights at our house.
But it had to be
turn
after
off the lights.
2016 because I was driving after
we did
during the Carter administration.
We had the energy crisis of let's say in 73 or whatever it was, and then we had the
gas shortages.
Gas shortage of 78, 79.
That's what I'm talking about.
Yes.
I remember there was a TV show where the hero, they stole a gas truck from a big bad gas company, and they drove it out a little bit into the desert. And they opened it up and started selling gas for reasonable prices or giving it away from free. Oh. And of course, the executives at the big old bad, energy company were just beside themselves with, what are we gonna do? They're ruining us. It's time immemorial, and this has happened. This is in Kamala Harris's history as well. Remember back to 2020, we're in the middle of the COVID pandemic, and the vaccines were coming out, and we're talking about pharmaceutical companies. We're talking about.
I don't remember much about that.
No, it's been a while.
No,
and COVID took over, and probably made you forget a lot of it.
That's some great memories right there.
I want you to listen to Kamala Harris. She's taking Big Pharma to task over the amount of money that they sometimes charge for some of their. This wasn't the vaccines, which were free, if I remember. But
well, they were free. The government paid for.
Yeah, but for drugs, penicillin or diabetes medicine, all that kind of stuff. Listen to her. She's threatening these big pharma companies. Cut 7.
I will snatch their patent, so that we will take over. And yes, we can do that. Yes, we can do that. Yes, we can do that. The question is, do you have the will to do it? I have the will to do it.
All right. First of all, I'm just going to say, and folks, we are a nonprofit, so I can't, pick and choose people and recommend that you vote for them. Okay. I'm just going to say, all things being equal, politics and policies aside, I do not want to listen to that high-pitched voice for the next 4 years. She always sounds like she's talking to second graders. Who's a good little boy? With a high-pitched voice. That was hard to listen to. But, Tim, I'd like your opinion on this because...
On her voice?
No, on the content of what she said. Yes, we can do this. You just have the will.
Listen to what she's saying.
Patents.
Listen to what she's saying. Yeah, she's saying, when I get, if I get in charge of being of the country, I'll do what I want to. And if it means seizing patents, I'll seize patents. You know what that patents are patents for a reason. They've been approved by pharmaceutical companies or businesses or car manufacturers to make something, and they don't want their intellectual property stolen.
Right. Or else what happens?
And she's saying if I don't think they're doing right, I'll strip them.
Yeah.
I'll take them away. And yes, you can. She insisted on it. There was nothing there about, you know what, that's you got to be really careful about saying stuff like that. And you know, if there are exploitations by pharmaceutical companies or others, or we'll look into that or whatever. No, I'll strip them of their. I'll shut down their business.
You know what happens if you strip patents? People stop inventing stuff. That's
Right,
what happens.
right.
Because they are investing money in research and development to come up with a better engine, a more efficient. Can you imagine if a company came up with a more efficient internal combustion engine? Now, obviously, she wouldn't take that away, but
why not?
Well, if you're gonna strip away the right to your own intellectual property, then nobody's going to invent anything. Listen, we all understand.
I've never heard of a president doing that.
Me either. She can't do it.
No.
She would try and get sued, and she would lose. But I want to know what kind of intelligence is thinking this is a good idea.
Well, this is what I mean by pandering, because what she's doing there, and again, it's worked for Democrats. The Republicans, basically their philosophy is free people up from government regulation to let them do what they want to help make this country better, and let them make money off of it.
Yes.
Give them incentive, right? The Democrat playbook is more of you are being oppressed by the rich man, especially the rich white men, and it's time for justice. Who's with me?
Right.
And we're going to get it. And if it means shutting down, taking people's patents away, then that's what we'll do. That's pandering to people's basically base emotions of jealousy and grievance.
And some of these people may be suffering. We understand that.
Yeah, but it's not my fault.
Well, what I'm saying is that's a powerful emotion. When
Yes,
someone's
and she's tapping into that.
Yes,
she's pandering to that. And somebody asked her, and who bigger to pick on than Big Pharma?
Right.
Because I mean,
Big oil. That's coming.
Well, yeah,
That's the
but I
combustion
mean,
engine he's
listen,
talking about.
Listen. I know there are issues with quote Big Pharma that conservatives have.
Right.
I've heard those before, but I'm just saying that overall the pharmaceutical companies are in it to make money. Yes, they're in it to make money, but they only make money if things that they produce help make people healthier.
Right.
Now, I know there are people say, well, these things don't make people healthier. I don't want to get into that too much.
Right.
I'm just saying that's the general principle.
Yeah, if you don't think that those drugs work, then don't get them. That's part of the other side of the coin.
Here's the model, though. With pharmaceutical companies, they will take 10 different ideas and dump $20 million into each one of those ideas. So, and one of those ideas is going to work, and the other 9 go nowhere.
Right.
But you can't get your $20 million back.
Right.
So now you have $80 million that you've invested that you've in research that didn't go anywhere. You have one product that you're going to sell. You got to stay in business, and you got to make money for your investors. All that money that you lost on trying to get some drug that didn't make it, that's why you have drugs that cost more than you think they should, because you're paying for research.
The reason, if she goes forward and continues in the last months, 2 months and a half, whatever we've got here, all right, if she continues to talk this way, there's going to be a sizable portion of the American people who are going to still support her under the delusion that we can't wind up like Venezuela. Folks, it happens. It can happen to America. And those kinds of policies will destroy the greatest economy in the world and maybe human history.
Yeah, but I mean, she is she makes Obama look like a conservative,
right?
On some of the things she says and does, and believes in. I mean, she is She is. There's no exaggeration. She was voted. Wasn't she like the most liberal senator?
Yes.
Yes.
Right there with Bernie Sanders.
Ahead of Bernie Sanders.
You mean more liberal?
More liberal.
When she was in the Senate. So, wow.
I don't care, Tim. She looks friendly.
Well, listen. She's tied with Donald Trump.
Yes.
She's tied with him everywhere. She's ahead in some of the polls, some of the national polls,
Right.
but in the battleground states. So, I mean, all the things we've talked about, which she needs to be asked about. I mean, there's, like I said, there are many people who vote on their emotions and whether they like somebody, or not. So there's a lot of that. There's some Americans. I don't know what the percentages are. A lot of people look at ideology and what they believe in, what they're going to do for the country, and not necessarily their personality or whether they like them or not. And then there are substantial percentage of Americans who go, I just don't like Trump. He just runs his mouth too much and is mean to people. I want to vote for somebody else. Who's out there? Harris, she's okay. I'll vote for her instead. There's people like that.
Well, I remember we talked about the Bush-Gore election in the year 2000, and I don't know what the percentage was, but the post-election autopsy, if you will, and Bush, of course, won by the thinnest of margins because of Florida. There were people who said in answering polls, well, Gore is kind of wooden. He's always talking like a professor. Bush seems like the kind of guy I could sit down and have a beer with. Okay, what does that mean?
You drink.
George Bush is not going to have a beer with you. Are you going to vote for? No, I voted for George Bush. I'm saying you really shouldn't be making your political decision based on whether you think the person is likable. But to your point, Tim, a lot of people do that.
Well, especially with the advent of television, of course, back in the 50s and 60s and forward, that became a big part of a presidential campaign. Is how a president comes across in the media.
Yes,
television, radio, whatever like that. That does matter. That's what hurt Harris going up to now. She doesn't sound too bright when she's done media interviews. She finished dead last in the Democrat primary. People forget that.
And dropped out before the first
primary. Yeah. All right. Thank you, Steve.
My pleasure.
Thanks to Ed.
Yes.
And
I try not to watch the television anymore.
No, it's okay.
You want a full report tomorrow?
I'll just stop and watch it with you. All right. Have a great afternoon, everybody. See you tomorrow.